After my rebirth, I suddenly no longer wished to marry Xiao Jingqing. I feigned illness to avoid accompanying my elder sister to the palace, thus evading the empress's arranged marriage. I personally burned every painting I had created for him over the years. In my previous life, I married Xiao Jingqing as his consort, enduring his most destitute decade by his side. Yet I died of illness the day before his coronation. He posthumously honored me as the virtuous and cultured empress, commissioning grand imperial tombs for me. The world praised his deep devotion, but only I knew, through those 10 years, I never truly occupied his heart. When I awoke, my elder sister asked if I wished to accompany her to the palace. To the palace. I lifted my gaze toward the doorway, feeling dazed as memories surged back like a tidal wave. It felt as though I'd returned to the Prince Yu's residence. Once more, I saw myself beneath the hibiscus tree, counting chess pieces, consumed by endless solitude. My elder sister urged me again. I pulled my thoughts back and smiled at her. No. Thank you. My health hasn't fully recovered yet. I'd rather not be troubled. You truly won't go? My elder sister seemed surprised. But you wanted to see His Highness the Prince of Yu, didn't you? Today is the perfect opportunity. I lowered my eyes. His Highness the Prince of Yu is such a distinguished figure. Even if I entered the palace, I'd only catch a distant glimpse of him. What meaning would that hold? My elder sister hesitated for a moment before nodding. Very well. She rose to leave, but paused, turning back. Rest well, Suyi. Look at yourself. Ever since falling ill, you've grown so old and weary. It's hardly like you. Is that so? But after a decade of toil, dying from illness, how could I not look old and weary? Still, unwilling to trouble my sister, I forced a smile. Once I'm well again, you'll find me bothersome once more. Bothersome I may be, she replied. But it's better than looking like a little old woman now. With a mischievous chuckle, my sister left with light, quick steps. Silence settled back into the room. I lowered my gaze, studying my own young, delicate hands. These past 10 years in the prince's mansion, Xiao Jingqing endured the late emperor's suspicion and relentless suppression. Life was bitter. I stayed by his side, enduring every hardship without complaint. To save expenses, I took on many menial tasks, leaving my hands rough as a peasant woman's. I never felt the hardship. I only hoped that one day, he might turn and look at me. But he never did. His heart held only the throne, not me. I once comforted myself. What did it matter if my husband didn't cherish me? If he triumphed, I would be empress. Life couldn't be too bad. Alas, misfortune struck, and I died the day before his coronation. A lifetime of toil, all for naught. Now, having been reborn, I shall treat myself better. I rose from bed and retrieved several portraits I had painted of Xiao Jingqing from the bottom of the wardrobe. I set them ablaze. Not long after my elder sister departed, fireworks lit up the palace sky. I leaned against the doorway, gazing at them from afar. The night wind was fierce. Mingxi draped a cloak over me and urged, "Miss, please return to your chambers to rest. Your health is still fragile. How can you endure such a wind?" I withdrew my gaze, nodded, and retreated inside. Mingxi helped me in and saw the charred remains of the paintings in the brazier. She rushed over in alarm. "Oh my! These are your paintings. Why did you burn them?" She reached into the flames to salvage them. I grabbed her hand. "Mingxi, I burned them. Don't try to save them." "What?" Mingxi's eyes reddened. "Why, miss? Several of these took you so much effort to paint. Why burn them? Didn't you say that if you ever stood before His Highness Prince Yu, you'd give them all to him? 7 years ago, Xiao Jingqing saved me. Because of that rescue, I fell for him and secretly painted many portraits of him. I thought that if I ever stood before him, I would present these paintings to him. But later, I married into the Prince Yu's household and never gave them to him. Xiao Jingqing has no memory of ever saving me. All my youthful gratitude and affection were nothing but self-delusion. That day will never come. Xiao Jingqing and I will never meet again in this lifetime. Fireworks lit up the palace banquet for the second time. The empress must have already chosen a bride for Xiao Jingqing. Right? This time I won't be there. I wonder which young lady will take my place. The palace banquet. Xiao Jingqing spent half his life scheming and plotting, climbing relentlessly until he reached the pinnacle he desired, above all men. Alone at the summit. Yet on the day he ascended the throne, he felt no joy. Step by step, he had walked toward the imperial throne, yet stood utterly alone. The world celebrated his ascension, unaware of the loneliness within his heart. He glanced toward the direction of the royal residence, thinking faintly, if only she were still here. Truthfully, even when she was alive, Xiao Jingqing never considered her important. She was merely the daughter of a minor official, pointed out by the empress to humiliate him. He didn't blame her, nor did he love her. During his decade in the prince's residence, consumed by his quest for the throne, he paid her little attention. He only remembered her as someone who quietly took care of everything for him, never asking for anything in return. By the time he finally emerged victorious and could ask her what she wanted, she was gone, light as a feather, as if she had never been there at all. After his coronation, he posthumously honored her as empress and built a grand imperial mausoleum for her. He didn't know why he did it, perhaps out of gratitude for her decade of companionship. Yet even years later, she still haunted his thoughts. The figure that had been blurred in life became crystal clear in death. He owed her far too much. Your Highness, perhaps you should decline. This palace banquet is clearly aimed at you. If you attend, who knows how the crown prince's faction will target you? His retainers protested vehemently, urging Xiao Jingqing not to enter the palace. Having lived this life twice, he knew full well what awaited him there. Yet after a moment's silence, he shook his head. No. I must go. Because she would be there too. Tonight. She would be betrothed to him. In his previous life, he had viewed this as a humiliation. This time, however, he was actively embracing this arranged marriage. He owed her a decade of debt. In this life, he intended to treat her better. As he entered the palace by carriage and took his seat, it came as no surprise to hear the crown prince's confidant fan the flames. Your Highness, the Prince of Yu has arrived remarkably early. The emperor, upon learning this, will surely be deeply moved. The remark was a jab, implying he only rose early when there was profit to be gained. Xiao Jingqing paid it no mind, merely turning with a smile to reply. Minister Meng looks particularly ruddy today. I presume you've had your fill of wine at your mistress's place? Meng Qi's face drained of color. He kept a mistress hidden from his wife. Keeping a mistress was one thing, but this woman was the daughter of a convicted minister, a secret he could never reveal. He had concealed this matter perfectly. How could Xiao Jingqing have discovered it? What else did he know? Your Highness, you must be mistaken. Your humble servant has never kept a concubine. Meng Qi's heart pounded like a drum. Daring not to think further, he lowered his gaze and hastily drained a cup of wine, terrified to meet Xiao Jingqing's eyes again. Xiao Jingqing had no intention of pressing him further. Settling accounts could wait for another day. He lifted his gaze, scanning the back rows where the minister's family sat. If memory served, Jiang Sui should be seated at the very back. Yet, after searching for a long while, she was nowhere to be seen. Perhaps it was still too early, and she hadn't arrived yet. He swirled his wine cup, waiting patiently. A burst of fireworks erupted as the emperor and empress entered. Xiao Jingqing rose to pay his respects. The emperor, who had never favored him, merely nodded without further acknowledgement. The empress, however, smiled warmly, her words laced with hidden barbs. Xiao Jingqing responded calmly and measuredly. Finding no fault, the Empress Dowager sat down with a dark expression. Xiao Jingqing also sat down, unable to resist glancing toward the back once more. Still, he saw no sign of her. Was she simply too far away to see clearly? He calmed himself. No need to rush. When the betrothal was announced, he would surely see her. As he spoke, the hour of his past life arrived once more. The crown prince mentioned the newly constructed lotus pond in the palace. Smiling as he said, "I recall, Brother Wang, you were the finest swimmer. 7 years ago, you even dived in to save a young girl. Wasn't she the daughter of Minister Jiang, the junior minister of the Bureau of Imperial Supplies?" Xiao Jingqing froze. Back in the prince's residence, Jiang Sui had once asked him if he remembered saving someone from the water that year. His mind had been heavy then, and he hadn't heard her clearly. He'd just shaken his head, saying he didn't remember, and hurried away. Now, recalling that moment, he realized she must have had so much she wanted to tell him. It seems so. The Empress glanced behind her and asked, "Has the daughter of Lord Jiang arrived? Quickly summon her forward. I wish to see her." As the eunuch went to fetch her, Xiao Jingqing's heart tightened. He found himself unexpectedly nervous. He resolved that after the marriage was decreed, he would listen to her words attentively, never again letting her words fall unheard. He waited in silence until the eunuch brought in a woman dressed in yellow. This humble maiden, Jiang Suxin, pays her respects to Her Majesty the Empress. Jiang Suxin? That's not right. He looked up in shock, staring at the woman before him, unable to comprehend why she had been replaced. The Empress asked with a smile, "Are you the girl Jingqing saved all those years ago?" "No, Your Highness." The woman shook her head in panic. "The one you saved was my younger sister. She is ill today and could not come to the palace." "Ill?" She was ill. His heart sank, a wave of disappointment washing over him. If she didn't come today, then the arranged marriage would be off. What was he to do? The Empress knew not what he thought, nor did she care. She had summoned a Jiang daughter to force upon Xiao Jingqing anyway, to prevent him from forming alliances with other ministers. Which daughter it was made no difference. So she smiled. "Jingqing and your Jiang family truly share a deep karmic bond. By the way, do you play the zither? Prince Yu excels at the Xiao flute. Perhaps." "Mother!" Xiao Jing clutched his chest and began coughing violently. "Your humble son suddenly feels unwell. Might I cough? Might I withdraw first?" His violent coughing fit twisted his face in agony, as if death were imminent. The Empress's words were abruptly cut off. She paused, feigning concern. "Jingqing, what's wrong? Quickly, summon the imperial physician." "It's unnecessary. Your humble son sustained an injury just 2 days ago. With rest, it will be fine." Supported by attendants, he left the palace banquet, his body weak. As soon as he boarded the carriage, he slowly sat upright, his gaze dark and troubled. How could she have fallen ill? He must see her, but he couldn't just show up at her home unannounced. He needed a plan. Because of what happened all those years ago, she had always cherished him. Everything else might change, but this one thing never would. He needn't worry too much. Once they met, everything would fall into place naturally. By the time sister returned home, midnight had fallen. She stood by, removing her hairpins, still shaken. Plain clothes, You nearly scared me to death today. I was peacefully eating pork knuckles in the back when suddenly I was summoned before the Empress. She even asked me in front of Prince Yu if I could play the zither. I froze. Then what? Then it ended. Prince Yu suddenly fell ill and passed away. So they sent me back. I stared blankly for a long moment. Passed away? Why didn't I hear the death announcement? Huh? Not that kind of passed away. He returned to his mansion. Oh. I knew it, this lifetime. He died so young. Did the Empress Dowager arrange a marriage for him? No. Why do you ask? I shook my head and said nothing more. It seems this lifetime's events are vastly different from the last. True. Life is like a chessboard, ever shifting. One move alters the entire game. I only hope this move of mine is the right one. After tidying up, my elder sister returned to bed. Suddenly, she noticed the brazier on the floor. What's this? I glanced over. The brazier was extinguished, leaving only a few palm-sized fragments propped against its rim. Oh, that's... My mind went blank. That's... What? Judging by the fragments, they must have been paintings. Yet for some reason, I couldn't recall what they depicted, nor why they were burned. After a long moment, I said, just some unimportant things. Since they were burned, they must have been insignificant. Why dwell on them now? Truthfully, my body had long since recovered, but having spread the rumor of illness, I naturally had to pretend to convalesce for a few days. 3 days later, guests arrived at the house, and I had no choice but to go to the front hall. Only upon arriving did I discover the visitor was none other than Gu Zhao. We had once been somewhat acquainted, back when we studied at the academy. I noticed him always alone and not very talkative, so I looked out for him. Later, I heard he was the academy's unlucky star, despised by everyone. He was said to have caused his mother's death at birth, and at 5 years old, he pushed his brother into a pond, drowning him. I feared him and distanced myself from him thereafter. Many years later, I learned the truth. He hadn't pushed his brother. He had fallen into the water, and his brother, trying to save him, had drowned by accident. But by then, I was already married, and he had left the capital. There was no way to tell him I was sorry. The young man before me stood tall and slender, his features strikingly handsome, though a trace of aloofness still lingered in his eyes. Seeing my elder sister and me enter, he greeted us politely. Yet when his gaze fell upon me, he paused slightly before quickly averting his eyes. Father stroked his beard and laughed heartily. Truly, heroes emerge in youth. Ah, Zhao. If your father knew how accomplished you've become, he'd be overjoyed even in the afterlife. Gu Zhao lowered his eyes and smiled faintly. I must thank you for your care. Uncle. It's your own doing. Now go meet your aunt. She's in the back courtyard and says she wants to give you a jar of fine wine. This nephew will take his leave then. He nodded, exited the door, and headed toward the rear courtyard. Watching him disappear into the distance, my elder sister asked father curiously. Father, is he truly deaf in one ear? He seemed to hear perfectly well just now. I was taken aback. Deaf in one ear? Yes. I heard it at the palace banquet. My sister explained. Several years ago, he fell into the water during winter. After he was pulled out, his ear went deaf. I hadn't known about this incident and was momentarily at a loss for words. After nearly drowning at age 5, he developed an intense fear of water, never approaching its edge. How could he have fallen in again years later? A while later, I left the front hall to return to my room. Just then, I encountered Gu Zhao emerging from mother's quarters. Our paths crossed in the narrow corridor. He paused, silently stepping aside without a word. Back then, I truly believed he had caused his brother's death and dared not speak to him again. He couldn't understand my reaction and mustered the courage to confront me. But I panicked and told him to leave. He left in a daze, braving the rain, and never grew close to anyone again. Whenever we met since, it was always like today, silent avoidance. Watching him, my heart ached. I'm sorry, Gu Zhao. It was my youthful ignorance that hurt you. After a moment's hesitation, I stepped before him. Gu Zhao, are you leaving already? He seemed slightly surprised. Lifting his gaze, his lashes fluttered, but he quickly concealed it. Yes. No more words followed. I heard from father that you've left Jiangnan now. Transferred to the capital. It must have been difficult for you to come back from there. His hand, hidden in his sleeve, tightened slightly. After a long silence, he finally lifted his gaze to meet mine. Miss White Robe. What exactly do you want to say? Those eyes were fragile, as if already prepared to be hurt again. Only then did I realize how deeply my past indifference had wounded him. Truthfully, I could empathize with him. A dull ache gripped my heart. I drew a shallow breath, fighting back the mist gathering in my eyes. Gu Zhao, I was wrong about what happened back then. I'm sorry. I know you didn't push your brother. He drowned trying to save you. As if struck by lightning, he froze in place. Instead of the hurtful words he'd expected, an apology came, and he recoiled, terror churning in his eyes as if gauging my sincerity. After a long moment, he nervously averted his gaze, forcing himself to steady. Why bring up the past? I've long forgotten it. Every flicker of his emotion was etched in my eyes. Yes. I had distanced myself from him for so many years, how could he possibly trust me? I didn't press him. I merely smiled and said, my birthday is in 7 days. I'll host a poetry gathering at home. Will you come? His knuckles shifted uneasily. After a long silence, he replied, I'm not particularly acquainted with Miss Sui. Why invite me? I still have official duties at the magistrate's office. I'm afraid I cannot accompany you. With that, he lowered his eyes and walked away quickly. I'll send you an invitation, I called after his retreating figure. Sui, wear this set today. You look best in it, like a ripe peach. My elder sister waved a soft pink gown before me. Staring at the vivid hue, timidity stirred within me. No. I'm too old for such delicate colors now. What do you mean at your age? Sister widened her eyes, poking me with her finger. Hey. You're only 16. Why are you trying to look like an old woman? I jolted awake. Right, I was only 16 now. Not the gloomy, black-clad princess confined within the palace walls. At this age, one should indeed be vibrant. I smiled, took the clothes, and agreed. All right. I'll wear them. Heading to the garden, I still felt a bit nervous. I wasn't used to this feeling of being 16 again. Afraid others might see me all dressed up and make fun of me. Only when I saw my old friends, each dressed in vibrant reds, greens, and yellows, like a riot of spring flowers, did I finally relax. The birthday girls here. Several sisters pulled me over, teasing me endlessly. I laughed and scolded them playfully, glancing around but seeing no sign of Gu Zhao. My heart sank. I suspected he wouldn't come. I sighed softly, but this became a point of contention. My elder sister accused me of being a sore loser and insisted I make amends by painting a picture. Helpless, I rose to paint, to ease the boredom of the boudoir. I'd always enjoyed painting, though no master. I had my own style. In the past, when funds were tight at the prince's mansion, I'd sold many paintings to support the household. Today, I took those chattering young girls as my subject, painting 100 butterflies vying for spring. Halfway through, I suddenly heard someone exclaim, "Oh, Gu Zhao has arrived." Startled, I turned to see Gu Zhao beneath the eaves, clad in plain white robes, radiant as a clear breeze and bright moon. He had finally come. Our eyes met. He gave a slight nod and said softly, "Miss Jiang, happy birthday." As he spoke, a servant behind him hurried forward carrying a brocade box. Smiling, "My master's small token of appreciation. Please accept it, miss." I exhaled in relief, my heart easing with joy that he had forgiven me. Then I took the brocade box and opened it, discovering he had gifted me a set of precious purple-haired brushes. How thoughtful. I smiled slightly, took a brush, and walked to Gu Zhao. "Since you brought brushes, you may complete the remaining half of this painting." He hesitated. "That might not be appropriate." "Why not? We came here to enjoy ourselves today." I tugged his sleeve, leading him to the desk and handing him a brush. After a moment's hesitation, he took it and silently filled in the remaining sections. With the final stroke, he shook his head softly. "It's poorly done. I've ruined your painting." "Where is it poorly done?" "I think blending the two styles creates a unique charm." I picked up the painting and showed it to everyone. Then, turning to him, I whispered, "I'm glad you came today." "Thank you." His ears flushed crimson, the gloom in his eyes dissipating as if illuminated by a ray of light. "Happy birthday." He repeated the words, this time with a hint of laughter in his eyes. During the poetry gathering, Gu Zhao spoke scarcely at all. With one ear impaired, certain words remained indistinct to him. Such an outstanding young man, had it not been for his hearing impairment, he would have been the envy of all as a peerless gentleman. It was truly a pity. I sighed softly to myself. Just then, his servant passed by, so I stopped him and casually asked, "How long have you been serving your young master?" The servant thought for a moment. "Oh, probably about 10 years now." "Do you know why your young master fell into the water all those years ago?" "I'm afraid not." "That was 7 years ago. It happened on the winter solstice. I was back home paying respects to my grandfather and wasn't with the young master. I only learned of it after returning. 7 years ago. The winter solstice, wasn't that the day I fell into the water?" My heart pounded like a drum. I hurriedly asked, "Where did he fall in?" The servant scratched his head. "I think it was at Wooming Lake." Wooming Lake. So I wasn't the only one who fell in that day. But why had I never seen him? I racked my brain, yet no answers came. Then again, there was a beast taming show by the lake that day. The crowd was thick as sardines, jostling shoulder to shoulder. Several people falling in on the same day wasn't all that surprising. I glanced up at Gu Zhao, standing not far away, and said no more. By the moon gate, behind the peach tree, a figure flashed past. When I looked over, only a maid was there, frantically wiping sweat from her brow. Had someone been here just now? Yes. The maid, still shaken, stammered, "His Royal Highness Prince Yu came." Xiao Jingqing had excused himself from the banquet, citing illness. True to form, the crown prince wouldn't let it go, arriving that very night with imperial physicians to inspect the prince's condition. Fortunately, Xiao Jingqing had prepared in advance, employing some cunning to obscure his pulse. The crown prince could only return empty-handed. After handling these troubles, Xiao Jingqing thought it was time to meet with Jiang Sui. The world shifted in the blink of an eye. Having missed the palace banquet, who knew what twists and turns lay ahead? She was now at the age for marriage discussions. If he delayed, someone else might seize the opportunity first. He pondered for a moment, vaguely recalling that her birthday was just a few days away. Back in the private residence, he had once used her birthday banquet as a pretext to win over the families of ministers. The struggle for the throne had been brutal back then, and she had sacrificed much for him. This time, it would be solely to bring her joy. He pondered briefly, then ordered his attendants to retrieve a set of precious purple-haired brushes. She excelled in calligraphy and painting, her brushwork being particularly exquisite. That was why, after her death, he had posthumously honored her as the virtuous and literary empress. The literary in her title referred precisely to this talent. Holding the brocade box, he couldn't help but smile. He recalled how, after her death, palace attendants had sorted through her belongings and discovered a stack of paintings in her dowry chest. They were all. Xiao Jingqing paused, his mind going blank. What kind of paintings were they? He couldn't recall. He only remembered later placing them in his bedchamber, often opening the box to look at them. After thinking long and hard without success, he gave up. In any case, her paintings were truly exceptional. She would surely be delighted to receive the brush he had gifted her. He could almost see her shy, timid smile now, and his heart swelled with joy. He longed for her birthday to come sooner. Several days later, Xiao Jingqing visited the Jiang residence under the pretext of investigating the source of the banquet wine and food. The entire journey consumed him with impatience. He wished he could sprout wings and fly to her side. Minister Jiang was terrified, thinking Xiao Jingqing suspected issues with the food he'd procured. He trembled, not daring to lift his head. Why so nervous? I'm merely passing by and wanted to ask you a few things. Xiao Jingqing stood up and glanced toward the rear courtyard. Why is your backyard so noisy? Today is the young lady's birthday. A group of children are holding a poetry gathering. Such a coincidence? I'll go take a look. The Jiang residence wasn't large. Stepping out of the main hall and passing through a moon gate led directly to the rear courtyard. Xiao Jingqing strolled to the moon gate. Lifting his gaze, he saw Jiang Sui, now just 16. Her face was rosy like peach blossoms. Paired with her pink attire, she looked as ethereal as a peach blossom fairy. He had never seen her like this before. In his previous life, the Wang family faced hardship. She dared not be too conspicuous. Her clothes mostly plain colors. Her hair adorned with only 1 or 2 silver hairpins. Nothing more. This new look truly caught Xiao Jingqing's attention. He remembered her kindness, but not that she could be so beautiful. He had even prepared his words. I came today to attend to official business. By chance, I heard from Minister Jiang that today is your birthday, so I thought I'd join the celebration. By the way, I hear you're exceptionally skilled at painting. This purple bristle brush is a recent acquisition. It would be a waste for me to keep it, so I'll bestow it upon you. Just as he lifted his foot to enter, he saw her running toward a youth standing beneath the eaves, her face alight with a smile. Since you've brought a brush, she said, then you shall complete the remaining half of the painting. The brush she waved in her hand was precisely the purple bristle brush gifted to her by that youth. Xiao Jingqing withdrew the foot he had already stepped out. How could such a coincidence occur? Someone had already given her the same thing. How could he possibly give his now? While he pondered, Jiang Sui had already taken the youth by the hand and led him to the desk, instructing him to paint with cheerful laughter and apparent intimacy. His heart sank with displeasure. He didn't believe Jiang Sui could possibly like that youth. She had eyes only for him, of that he was utterly certain. He was merely annoyed that at 16, she still didn't understand the boundaries between men and women. All that pulling and tugging, didn't she fear giving others the wrong impression? He sighed. Well, today was her birthday. In her moment of joy, she'd acted a bit out of character. It was harmless enough. Once she married him, such carefree days would be hard to come by. But since that youth had already gifted her a purple-haired brush, He felt awkward offering his own. With nothing else to present, he hesitated to celebrate her birthday. Well, perhaps he should put it off for today. He needed time to devise a proper plan. He lingered briefly by the moon gate, watching her a moment longer before turning away. Passing by Weiming Lake on his way, an idea suddenly struck him. 7 years ago, she had accidentally fallen into the water, and he had saved her. That day, he had dived in merely to put on a show of loving the people like his own children for the emperor, who was visiting incognito. He hadn't even gotten a clear look at her face. But this place must hold extraordinary significance for her. Why not choose this very spot? His mind made up. He closed his eyes with calm composure, imagining Jiang Sui's look of astonished embarrassment when the time came. To meet again in this familiar place, truly a beautiful thing. The maid said Prince you had visited, which startled me greatly. But then I heard father say he'd come to inspect the banquet food and wine, and my heart settled. I heard he suddenly fell ill at the banquet that day, so inspecting the food and wine made perfect sense. I returned to join the guests in revelry. Gu Zhao remained quiet throughout the day. When the banquet ended at nightfall, I escorted him to the door. Zhao, our families are old acquaintances. We should visit more often. Whenever you have free time, please come to my home. Having lived an extra lifetime, I instinctively addressed him as Zhao, the way one might call a younger relative. Unexpectedly, that single Zhao made his face flush. He cleared his throat, quickly masking his emotion, and replied with apparent indifference, "Mm." Then he departed with his attendant, his steps growing lighter and quicker as he walked away. The servant leaned in with a teasing grin, whispering something. Gu Zhao clenched his jaw, twisted the boy's waist with a sharp pinch, and the servant yelped in protest. Releasing him, Gu Zhao glanced back at me, then turned away with a satisfied smile. He strode forward with his back straight, striding purposefully, his high ponytail bouncing lightly. I smiled faintly and returned to my room. Early the next morning, Mingji suddenly handed me an invitation. It was from Sister Wen, who hadn't been able to attend yesterday's banquet, inviting me to a boat ride on Lake Wuming in 3 days. I had intended to rest for a few days, but my father maintained close ties with the Wen family, making refusal difficult. I had no choice but to accept. 3 days later, I wore a pale pink layered skirt and took Mingji with me to the appointment at Weiming Lake. Stepping down from the carriage, Mingji pointed to a blooming crabapple tree by the lakeside and exclaimed, "Miss, look at that crabapple tree. It's so large and blooming so splendidly." I turned my gaze to the lakeside, where the crabapple blossoms were indeed radiant and unforgettable. Suddenly, I recalled having seen a crabapple tree somewhere before, one even larger and more beautiful than this one. But where exactly had I seen it? I couldn't recall for the life of me. The sound of hooves reached my ears. I turned abruptly to see Gu Zhao riding a white horse, galloping swiftly toward us, in plain white robes. He reined in his horse before me and asked, "What are you doing here?" He wore official robes, so he must have been passing by. I replied, "I came to meet Sister Wen Yu. She invited me for a boat ride, but it seems she's running late." He frowned. "Wen Yu? I just saw her returning to her residence from outside the city. Why would she invite you for a boat ride here? Is that so?" I pondered for a moment. Perhaps she has other matters to attend to today. She'll come once she's finished. Perhaps. Gu Zhao glanced around, dismounted, and said, "There are few visitors by the lake today. I can't bear to leave you waiting here alone. Why don't I stay with you? I'll depart once she arrives." His expression was earnest, making refusal difficult. After some thought, I nodded, "Very well." So he walked beside me, accompanying me to the lakeside where the crabapple trees stood. The crabapples are in full bloom, I remarked, searching for something to say. Gu Zhao stood a little way back from the water, smiling. But his eyes were fixed on me. Why are you looking at me? I wasn't. He quickly averted his gaze, looking up at the crabapple blossoms. After a moment, his eyes returned to me. Hesitating, he asked, Suyi, how did you know my brother drowned trying to save me? My breath caught. The day his brother saved him, a servant had witnessed it. But that servant, fearing blame, dared not speak up for him. It wasn't until over a decade later that the truth was revealed. By today's reckoning, that's still 6 years away. I truly shouldn't know this yet. I avoided his gaze and said, as a child, I was naive and believed whatever others said. But as I grew older, I reflected carefully. Your character is noble, and you value loyalty above all. You would never do such a thing. Back then, I must have misunderstood you. So that's how it was. He exhaled softly, as if to speak, but his words caught in his throat. He lowered his head and smiled. After years of suspicion, someone finally believed him. He was truly happy. Seeing his expression, no longer the lonely, sensitive one from our first meeting, I couldn't help but be moved. The spring breeze stirred the lake, sending ripples across its surface. Gu Zhao, who feared water, couldn't help but take a half-step back. I noticed and asked him, Zhao, I heard that you also fell into the water 7 years ago? He paused slightly, his expression shifting to unease. Yes. I remember you feared water ever since that childhood incident, never venturing near lakes. Why did you fall in again 7 years ago? Your servant said it happened on the winter solstice. I was by the lake that day, why didn't I see you? It's been too long. I don't remember. He turned his face away, his fingers fidgeting nervously. How could you forget something like that? I thought. He simply didn't want to talk about it. Since that was the case, I shouldn't press further. All right. I sighed softly, turning my gaze toward the distance, wondering, why isn't Sister Wen here yet? Gu Zhao glanced back, staring at me for a long moment. After much hesitation, he clenched his fist and called out, Sui. What is it? I turned back. He drew a deep breath, pressed his lips together, and said, actually, back then, I came to find you. Huh? I felt a bit dazed. How could I not quite understand? Having found the courage to speak, Gu Zhao no longer held back, pouring out his words in one breath. That day, I came to Wuming Lake solely to see you. I was about to leave the capital with my father, and I didn't know if I'd ever return. So I wanted to see you one last time, knowing you'd come to watch the animal training. I slipped away from my family and came alone. But you were afraid of me then, so I dared not approach. I could only watch from afar. Soon after, I saw you being pushed into the water. I jumped in to save you. But alas, Prince Yu was closer and pulled you out before I could. He finished with a bitter smile. My heart pounded like a drum. So that day, he had fallen into the water to save me. But he fears water. Why? Gazing at his earlobes, flushed crimson as if they might bleed. I suddenly understood. What else could it be? Besides affection, what else could it be? Yet after how I treated you back then, why did you? I never blamed you. Back then, everyone feared me. Your distancing yourself was only natural. I never held it against you. He gazed at me, a smile playing on his lips, his eyes sparkling like stars. So now that you've chosen to accept me, I'm truly overjoyed. It felt like I'd been struck senseless. unable to recover for a long while. He feared water. Yet he dived in during winter to save me, even losing the use of one ear because of it. But Gu Zhao, what in me could possibly be worthy of your affection? Lost in thought, I suddenly heard the clatter of hooves behind me. Your Highness! Wait for me! I turned in haste and saw Xiao Jingqing. How could I encounter him here? When I died, he was already 30, with silver streaks at his temples. His youth long gone. Seeing him so young now felt strangely jarring. Meeting him again after a lifetime felt surreal. I momentarily forgot to step aside. By the time I remembered, he was already riding his horse right up to me. The scenery by the lake is splendid today. This young lady looks familiar. Could it be that I? As he spoke, his gaze suddenly fell upon Gu Zhao standing nearby. For some reason, his expression stiffened. The horse shifted restlessly. Gripping the reins, he glanced between me and Gu Zhao, momentarily forgetting what he'd been about to say. Since we'd run into him, there was no avoiding it. Gu Zhao and I bowed in unison. Your Highness. Prince Yu. Xiao Jingqing paused, then dismounted. Rise. I rose, head bowed, unable to meet his gaze. He looked at Gu Zhao with a complex expression, but quickly decided to ignore him. Pointing at me, he said, You look familiar. Are you from Magistrate Zhang's household? That he recognized me, it must have been on the birthday celebration when he passed by my courtyard and saw me from afar. Holding my breath, I kept my eyes lowered and replied respectfully. Indeed. Ha! What a coincidence! He laughed heartily. Seeing my lack of reaction, he added, I even saved your life when you were a child. Strange. Why bring this up now? In my past life, after marrying him, I asked if he remembered saving someone. He clearly said he didn't. Seems he does remember. Back then, he simply didn't want to acknowledge me. I forced a smile. Yes. Your Highness's kindness is beyond my ability to repay. This left him speechless. He held his whip and gave a dry chuckle. Just then, a small boat drifted across the lake. An old man approached, singing a song. Spotting us, he exclaimed cheerfully, I've just brewed some tea and now I've met kindred spirits. Would the guests on shore care to join me for a boat ride and share this fresh brew? For some reason, I felt this old man's arrival was odd. I instinctively declined. No. Thank you. Excellent. Xiao Jingqing answered before I could. Then turned to me. We share a profound connection. Meeting today and sharing this lake journey is truly a blessing. With that, he stepped onto the boat. His gaze fixed on me, leaving me no choice but to follow. I truly didn't want to share a boat with him, but as the daughter of a minor official who had received his kindness, refusing outright would be unreasonable. After much hesitation, I steeled myself and walked over. I figured he was just acting on a whim today, no matter what he said. I'd just play dumb and stay silent. Just as I was about to board, Gu Zhao jumped onto the boat before me. We three truly have a connection. He laughed heartily, reaching out to pull me aboard. Xiao Jingqing's face darkened, and the old man seemed slightly uneasy. My boat could barely hold 3 people, too many would sink it. Gu Zhao ignored him, plopping down with a thud. He spread his hands. It didn't sink. The air hung with deathly silence. I shot Gu Zhao a grateful glance. Thank goodness for him, at least it wasn't too awkward. The old man gave a dry chuckle and silently began rowing. In the boat's center, a kettle of tea simmered, its fragrance wafting through the air. Xiao Jingqing said nothing. Sitting down opposite me, Gu Zhao feared water. As the boat moved, his face paled, and he closed his eyes periodically to steady his breathing. Facing Xiao Jingqing made me even more uncomfortable. I lowered my gaze. daring not to make a sound. After a long silence, Xiao Jingqing broke the quiet first. Am I that terrifying? Why won't any of you dare look at me? I hesitated for a moment before replying. Your servant has an eye ailment and cannot lift her gaze. Gu Zhao nodded. I can attest to that. Xiao Jingqing's face darkened further. He held back his frustration, then turned to look at me. His tone deliberately softened. You must be 16 now, right? Yes. How time flies. When I saved you, you were just a little girl with a head of yellow hair. I didn't know why he kept emphasizing this point. I gave an awkward smile and nodded. Your Highness is truly kind-hearted. I am deeply grateful. He choked again, finally dropping the subject. He shot Gu Zhao a displeased glance and asked me, Did you two arrange to meet here today? Gu Zhao quickly answered, No, Your Highness. I was merely passing by and happened to find Sui waiting here for a friend. Concerned for her safety alone, I accompanied her. Sui? That sounds intimidating. Intimate. Is your relationship unusual? Gu Zhao looked up, eyes wide with innocence. What did Your Highness say? My hearing is poor in one ear, I couldn't catch that. Xiao Jingqing's face darkened like charcoal. He rubbed his forehead. If you can't hear, then shut up. Gu Zhao closed his mouth and truly fell silent. The atmosphere felt off, making my heart race. I lowered my head deeper and deeper, wishing I could become invisible. Xiao Jingqing, however, wasn't about to let it go. He racked his brain for something to say. I responded only with and yes. Like a statue of a mud Buddha. Eyes fixed on my nose fixed on my heart. I spoke sparingly, refusing to engage further. I hear your painting skills are exceptional. When might you paint a portrait for this prince? Your Highness has misheard. This humble maiden's brushwork is crude and unworthy of your eyes. Plain. Cotton. Robe. He seemed on the verge of anger. Unnoticed, the boat had drifted to the lake's center. Just as he was about to speak, a sudden splash erupted beneath their feet. All heads dropped in unison. The boat was indeed sinking. The old man clutched his head and wailed. I told you it would sink. What could they do now? Xiao Jingqing sprang to his feet. But this movement only made the boat capsize faster. With several splashes, all 4 people plunged into the water. Amidst the splashing, I saw Xiao Jingqing desperately swimming toward me. Sui. Stay still. But I couldn't stay still. Gu Zhao was afraid of water. Kicking my feet against the water, I turned and saw Gu Zhao choking on water. Hesitating only a moment, I swam toward him. Ever since falling into Weiming Lake 7 years ago, Mother had hired a fisherwoman to teach me and my elder sister to swim. I was no longer a landlubber. Once I pulled Gu Zhao to safety, he calmed considerably, overcoming his fear to swim ashore with me. Xiao Jingqing was hauled out by the old man. Sui. I'm fine. Gu Zhao's voice trembled. Yet he still tried to reassure me. His health was fragile, that's how he lost hearing in one ear years ago. Fearing another accident, I ignored everything else and signaled Mingji to help us lift him onto the shore. After taking a few steps, I paused and looked back at Xiao Jingqing. Soaked to the skin, he pushed the old man away, bent over to cough up water, then raised his head to meet mine. Startled, I bowed my head slightly in farewell before hurrying away with Gu Zhao. Fortunately, Gu Zhao was only startled. After walking a while, he quickly recovered. He pushed me into the carriage. Sui. Hurry home. Warm yourself by the fire. Don't catch a chill. Then what about you? I'll go see the prince first. Then ride back. These days are bitterly cold. Riding back would only make things worse. Get in the carriage. I'll see you off. Impossible. Riding together would invite gossip. My reputation is already ruined, I care not what others say. but I cannot drag you down with me. But go home now. He motioned to the coachman to drive on, smiling at me. I've spent years training in Jiangnan. My body is strong. You needn't worry. The carriage began to move, his figure growing smaller and smaller. I clung to the window frame, my eyes stinging. He clearly cared for me, yet never took advantage. Instead, he constantly considered my well-being, a true gentleman through and through. But in my past life, I misunderstood him for so many years. I never once apologized before I died. I truly regret it. I bowed my head, hot tears streaming down my face. Riverbank. Xiao Jingqing stood soaked in the shallow water until Jiang Sui's figure vanished from sight. Several subordinates hurried over, wrapping him in a quilt and helping him ashore. He pushed them away and walked silently toward his horse, tethered beside a crabapple tree. Gu Zhao hurried over, asking if he was unharmed. Ignoring him, Xiao Jingqing spurred his horse away to see Jiang Sui. He had invited her aboard a pleasure boat under the name of a Wen family maiden. Delayed by official duties, he feared she might wait too long and raced toward Lake Wuming. When he finally arrived, he found Gu Zhao there too. After the boat capsized, she had abandoned him and rushed recklessly to save Gu Zhao. How could this be? He was only slightly late. How had she already fallen under Gu Zhao's spell? Furious, yet unsure whom to blame, he returned to the prince's mansion in a gloomy mood. He changed into clean clothes and sat in his study for a while. Perhaps from the chill, a headache began to throb. That night, a subordinate suddenly reported that the crown prince's faction had made new moves, led by none other than Meng Qi. That Meng Qi, apparently, the previous warning hadn't taught him his lesson. With a cold expression, he summoned his subordinate and ordered him to head south of the city to capture Meng Qi's concubine. Minister Meng has a concubine? Just go and capture her. He must be hiding her. Xiao Jingqing spoke, then suddenly froze. He had suddenly forgotten where Meng Qi hid that mistress. Yet in his previous life, he had seen her, even used her to imprison Meng Qi. Now, however, he couldn't recall where she had been placed. He frowned, then remembered Jiang Sui's paintings. He kept them close, viewing them almost daily. Now, though, he had forgotten what those paintings depicted. How could this be? His heightened sensitivity quickly alerted him to the passive forgetting occurring within his mind. Events from his past life, ones that had yet to unfold in this existence, or would never happen at all, were quietly fading from his memory. Your Highness? His subordinate asked, puzzled. Xiao Jingqing snapped back to reality, frowning. Follow Meng Qi. That man is hidden in the southern part of the city. Find him at all costs. After the subordinate left, he hurriedly sat down and took out his brush and ink. He would write down everything he still remembered, all about the crown prince's faction, about the empress, about every minister, everything. Toward the end, he remembered Jiang Sui. Would he forget her too? He had intended to take his time. But now, outside the window, the cold wind howled fiercely, making the tree shadows sway. Xiao Jingqing clenched his fist, snapping the brush in his hand. He couldn't delay any longer. He must marry her before he forgot her. After returning from the riverbank, though I changed clothes promptly and stayed by the fire all day, I still caught a chill. I've been listless, sniffling, and without appetite. Gu Zhao also caught a chill, but upon hearing I was unwell and unable to eat, he began buying fresh delicacies daily from outside and had them delivered to me. Today's delivery was spicy crab from Tianfu Pavilion. Though my appetite remained absent, just seeing those crabs made me feel somewhat better. After 10 years in the prince's mansion, I'd long grown accustomed to neglect and indifference, no longer expecting anything from others. Yet now, As someone offered me piece by piece of their heart, I realized that deep within me still lived a little girl who needed to be cherished. Lying on my side on the bed, I smiled softly. Suddenly, my elder sister rushed in, whispering, "Suei, Prince Yu has come to our house." I sat up abruptly. What? What? You say he fell for me at first sight and wants to ask father for my hand? How could that be possible? My mind was in turmoil. I hurriedly slipped on my shoes, determined to rush to the front hall and stop it. But I found Xiao Jingqing already standing outside my door. Might Miss Su Xin step aside for a moment? He stood with his hands behind his back, his eyes deep and inscrutable. All right. My sister swallowed hard, lowered her head, and slipped away. After she left, Xiao Jingqing lifted his gaze to me and smiled faintly. "Sui, has your illness improved?" I stood there for a long moment, not responding to his question. Instead, I curtsied. "Your Highness, marriage is no trivial matter. I beg you to reconsider. I have pondered it 1,000 times over." He smiled faintly. "The moment we met by the lake, I knew you were the one for me. What is it? Are you unwilling to marry me?" "Naturally, I am unwilling." I paused, striving for respect. "Your Highness, you know nothing of me, nor I of you. How can we bind our lives together based on a single fleeting encounter?" His smile faded, his expression shifting like shifting clouds. After a long silence, he spoke in a deep voice. "Is it because of Gu Zhao?" "Yes. And no. Your Highness, we are simply not suited." He clenched his teeth, rage boiling within him. He growled lowly, "But you were always meant to be my consort." Meant to be. Something flashed through my mind. I suddenly lifted my gaze, staring at him in disbelief. Recalling recent events, I belatedly grasped something. He was a man consumed by imperial power. How could he crave a woman after just one meeting? That wasn't him. Unless he too had been reborn. Dizziness washed over me, and I stumbled back half a step, bracing against the door to steady myself. He rushed forward. "Sui." I raised a hand to stop him. I lifted my gaze and looked deeply into his eyes. "Your Highness, yesterday cannot be held onto. Our connection has run its course." He stiffened, his eyes suddenly widening as he stared straight at me. The air grew intensely still. In that shared gaze, neither of us spoke a word, yet we both understood everything. After a long moment, he asked hoarsely, "Sui, so you've been deliberately avoiding me? Your Highness knows full well. Why press further? Why?" After a moment's silence, I replied calmly, "Because I refuse to endure that lonely, tormented existence again. Because I wish to marry someone who truly understands me, who puts me first in all things, who genuinely loves me, not out of guilt. I don't feel only guilt toward you. Is that so? Then do you know what color I like? What fruit I love to eat? Can you promise you'll never forget me again? Never abandon me?" He fell silent. He couldn't answer. Of course he couldn't. Over the past decade, so many things came before me. I was constantly sacrificed, forgotten, taken for granted and cast aside. He knew this all too well. After a long silence, he lowered his brows. "Sui, I failed you before. From now on, I'll get to know you slowly. I'll put you first." I cut him off. "You won't change. I know him better than I know myself." He pressed his lips together. "Give me 1 month. I'll prove to you that if I can be a good emperor, I can certainly be a good husband." Without waiting for my reply, he turned and walked away quickly. I took 2 steps to chase after him. "Even if you do, I won't marry you. I won't marry you." Did you hear me? I won't marry you. Somehow, word got out that Prince Yu had come to my home to ask for my hand in marriage. The common folk all said I must have struck gold to win the favor of the Prince of Yu. Only I myself remained gloomy day after day. Upon hearing the news, Gu Zhao came to visit that very day. Everyone's saying Prince Yu came to ask for your hand. Is it true? I frowned slightly, not lifting my head, and softly replied, "MHM." He fell silent for a long moment, his voice low and heavy. "Congratulations. I know that since he saved you that year, you've felt." He lowered his gaze, unable to continue. I wanted to say I didn't wish to marry him, but I opened my mouth only to swallow the words back down. I understood Gu Zhao's feelings for me. To voice them would only give him false hope. He was a subject, while Xiao Jingqing was the prince. Xiao Jingqing intended to marry me. What could Gu Zhao possibly do? He would only be left with disappointment, and perhaps even face Xiao Jingqing's retribution. I clenched the handkerchief in my fist, pressed my lips tightly together, and ultimately remained silent. Gu Zhao also fell silent for a long time. As dusk fell, he forced a smile and bid me farewell. "Sui, congratulations." He turned and walked away quickly. His retreating figure was profoundly lonely. Gu Zhao never appeared again. 2 days later, I learned he had petitioned the court, volunteering to leave the capital and guard the Jade Gate Pass. In my previous life, he had also gone to the Jade Gate. I gazed beyond the mansion gates. Unexpectedly, my eyes grew hot. He had ultimately returned to his destined path. Xiao Jingqing had said he'd prove his sincerity within a month. The very next day, he sent several chests of rare treasures. Not knowing my tastes, he'd sent every precious item imaginable. No matter how picky I was, something was bound to please me. Rumors spread throughout the capital. Prince Yu, cautious for decades, had lost his reason over the daughter of a lowly official. But I knew better. He hadn't lost his mind at all. He was merely seizing this opportunity to lull the Crown Prince's faction into complacency. A day later, he reserved the entire Guangfu pavilion and invited me to a banquet. I refused to go, so he pressured my father, frightening him so badly he couldn't sleep all night. Left with no choice, I had to attend. Inside Guangfu Tower, aside from a few cooks, only he and I were present. He had anticipated my arrival. Smiling calmly, several chefs from beyond the frontier have joined Guangfu Tower. The dishes are fresh and innovative, you're bound to enjoy them. I didn't respond, merely said coldly, "This is coercion." He crossed his arms, raising an eyebrow with a smile, "Yet here you are. Shameless." I could only curse him silently. He gestured for me to sit, and I reluctantly took my place. He picked up a crab roe pastry for me and whispered softly, "Don't be angry. I'll apologize to your father later. Try a bite." This gentle, soft-spoken version of him was a first for me. A flicker of pity stirred in my heart, and I quickly turned my face away, falling silent. Ignoring me again, is he thinking about Gu Zhao? I snapped my head around, "Don't drag others into this." He scoffed, then grinned smugly, "Doesn't matter. He's leaving the capital soon anyway. Good for him for knowing better, anyone who challenges me won't end well." Watching his confident expression, I sighed. So in the end, is fate still pushing us together? Xiao Jingqing sent me gifts daily, exotic treasures or delicacies. The commotion was immense, known throughout the city. He said he wanted the whole world to know I was worth it. He'd never treated anyone with such devotion, and I wasn't heartless. As days passed, I couldn't help but feel touched. On the spring equinox, lanterns hung throughout the city, and young couples strolled the streets in pairs. Xiao Jingqing invited me to view the lanterns at the Drum Tower. After I arrived, I waited a while before he finally showed up. Late. He hurried over, carrying a small dog-shaped lantern, and sighed with relief. Suyi. I thought you wouldn't wait for me. I shrugged. It's fine. I'm used to it. Guilt flashed in his eyes as he pressed the lantern into my hands. Today is an exception. Trust me. It won't happen again. His tone was soft and sincere, making it hard to hold a grudge, especially since I hadn't waited long. Nice lantern. I took it and held it up to examine it. Seeing I wasn't angry, Xiao Jingqing finally relaxed. He leaned against the railing beside me as we watched the bustling street. Just then, a couple passed by. The man held fireworks, making silly faces to make his wife laugh. I watched, completely absorbed. Xiao Jingqing snorted coldly, like he's the only one with fireworks. He clapped his hands, and soon, the palace guards brought over several boxes. He grabbed a handful, lit them, and waved them in front of me, cheerfully calling out, Suyi. Look! These fireworks are red. He smiled, his gaze pure and intense, looking just like an ordinary young master without grand ambitions. Uncompetitive, focused solely on making his beloved girl happy. For a fleeting moment, I thought, if only he could stay this way forever. Mesmerized by the fireworks, I couldn't help but smile. It felt like ages since I'd been this happy. Doubts began to creep in. Perhaps Xiao Jingqing really had changed. Until that cold arrow suddenly shot toward us. Chaos erupted instantly. People screamed and fled in panic. Xiao Jingqing dodged just in time, escaping unharmed. The moment he saw the mark on the arrow's tail, his brow furrowed. After a brief struggle, he gritted his teeth. Suyi. Hide. Don't run around. Then, without looking back, he charged down the stairs. I stared at his figure disappearing at the stairwell entrance, frozen for a moment, then suddenly felt at peace. No one could have imagined the fire would spread so quickly. The drum tower was already hung with lanterns. In the chaos, several lanterns shattered, igniting the tower. I dashed toward the staircase entrance but was driven back by the flames. Thick smoke choked my breath, covering my nose and mouth. I scrambled upward, desperately searching for an escape route. But the drum tower burned with terrifying speed. With nowhere left to hide, I curled into a corner, choking on the smoke. I thought, this is probably the end. Sister, father, mother, I'll miss you all so much. I lay on the floor, my will to survive fading. Suyi. Gu Zhao's voice rang in my ears. I opened my eyes. This must be a dream, right? He should have left the capital already. Why would he come to save me? But the voice grew clearer. Suyi, where are you? It was him. Truly him. Gathering every ounce of strength, I screamed, I'm here. Through the thick smoke, Gu Zhao, wrapped in a wet quilt, rushed toward me. Don't be afraid. I'm here. Didn't you leave? Why did you come find me? He paused. I should have left. But suddenly, I wanted to see you one last time. I couldn't help but laugh. Gu Zhao. Oh, Gu Zhao. What could I possibly say? We must hurry. He pulled me up and ran toward the exit, the highest point of the drum tower. Do you trust me? He asked. I nodded. He smiled faintly, clasped me in his arms, and leaped. Goodbye, Xiao Jingqing. It was already the next day. He must have worked through the night. His eyes were hollow and bloodshot. Suyi. His eyes reddened as he looked at my freshly mended legs. At me who had nearly died. He couldn't find the words. He knew he had no right to say anything more. I smiled weakly. I held no resentment or hatred toward him. I had truly let it all go. It's okay. Jingqing. This was the first time I'd ever called him that. It's okay. At least this past month. I was truly happy. It felt like a dream I'd never dared hope for before. Thank you for giving me that dream. Sui. Don't say that. His eyes flushed crimson, tears spilling as his voice broke. Xiao Jingqing. Seeing you cry for me once was worth it. I smiled gently. Jingqing. Let me tell you a secret. Actually, I didn't leave you until 10 years after my death. Everything you did for me, I saw. Everything you did for the realm, I saw too. You were a wise ruler and a mighty sovereign. Under your Li dynasty, the people lived in peace and prosperity. Foreign tribes dared not invade. Those years were times of great harmony. Every day a good day. A man like you was never meant to be held back by personal attachments. I couldn't be so selfish as to ask you to change for me. I wanted you to sit upon the throne and be worthy of the people. We've already lived one lifetime together. You've made up for every regret I had. You owe me nothing more. Now, go to where you must go. He tried to hold back, but tears still rolled down his cheeks. After a long while, he knew it was time to end this. He stopped crying, closed his eyes to compose himself. Then he gave me a smile, turned decisively, and left. After jumping from the drum tower, both Gu Zhao and I suffered severe injuries. We each lay bedridden for months. Gu Zhao recovered before me. Once he could walk again, he visited my home daily. The following spring, when I could finally walk normally again, Gu Zhao took me out on horseback to enjoy the season. I forgot to mention, by this time, we were already betrothed. As we turned a corner and passed by the Prince Yu's mansion, I spotted a branch of crabapple blossoms reaching out from within the walls. I exclaimed in wonder, the Prince Yu's mansion has such a magnificent crabapple tree. Gazing at the mansion, my heart gave a sudden, sharp thud. How strange, it felt as though I had lived there for many years. But I had never even entered the Prince Yu's mansion. And I was only 17 now, how could I have lived there for so many years? What's wrong? Gu Zhao followed my gaze. I shook my head, nothing. It's just so strange. Never mind. I thought, wrapping my arms sweetly around Gu Zhao's waist. After this month, we'll be married. Many years later, Xiao Jingqing became emperor. In his embrace lay a notebook filled with entries that would later prove invaluable. Yet he couldn't recall why he'd ever written them down. The final page bore 2 words, marry her. It must refer to Jiang Sui. Strange as it seemed, the moment they met by the riverbank, he inexplicably resolved to seek her hand in marriage. His grand, public declaration made it known throughout the city. Looking back now, it seemed utterly absurd. He held the notebook, shaking his head with a faint smile. Yet the next instant, a wave of inexplicable regret welled up within him. He sat there with his head bowed, staring blankly at those 2 words for a very, very long time. Years later, Gu Zhao returned to the capital from Yumen to report on his duties, bringing his wife and daughter with him. At the palace banquet, Jiang Sui led her daughter forward to pay their respects. Xiao Jingqing had long forgotten everything from his past life. Yet his gaze still couldn't tear itself away from her. He didn't know why, but he inexplicably felt she was good in every way. He watched her speak, watched her soothe her child, watched her sit at the banquet table lost in thought. A faint smile touched his lips. Only when Gu Zhao took his seat, blocking her from view, did he withdraw his gaze. He stared at the lonely reflection in his wine cup, silent and desolate. After a while, an eunuch leaned close and whispered something in his ear. He frowned, then turned and walked toward the hall of diligent governance. As he walked, his mood suddenly lifted. Gazing at the majestic palace ahead, he straightened his back. This was the path he was meant to walk. At the banquet, His daughter pointed at the moon and smiled at Jiangsu. Mommy, look! The moon is so full. Jiangsu lifted her head, gazed at the moon, and smiled. Yes. It couldn't be any fuller. The end.